You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 127.
Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life. Hello and welcome. It's so fun. Today we're here, both Kaylee and I, chatting together. It's been a while.
We've had a couple individual episodes, and it's so fun to be recording together today.
Yes, COVID has made us get really creative.
Yes. Said every teacher everywhere.
Right, exactly. So in today's episode, we're sharing the 4 do's and don'ts for teaching mindfulness in the classroom so that you can avoid making the same mistakes that we made early on in our careers. And we made them over and over, unfortunately, until we learned.
We learned from them. It was a learning experience.
Exactly. So when you follow the tips we share in today's episode, you'll have success teaching mindfulness in your classroom and see results quicker.
Before we get into this episode, we're excited to share this week's sponsor, EduCalm Classroom. EduCalm Classroom is our online social-emotional learning and mindfulness program made by teachers for a real-life classroom. If you want to give your students strategies for managing their emotions and behaviors, for improving mental health, and if you want to have a daily routine that helps to create a calm and focused classroom, the EduCalm Classroom program will make it easy for you to reach these goals. All you have to do is log into our website, choose a theme you'd like to focus on for the month, like mindfulness or growth mindset or emotions or mindful movement. There's many different options, and then use the ready-to-use resources in either French or English because the program is bilingual. It's really as simple as pressing play on the audios and enjoying a 2 or 5 minute guided mindfulness practice with your students. So you don't have to be an expert in mindfulness or social-emotional learning to use this program. You get to learn and participate with your students. So you can use the first unit of EduCalm Classroom for free indefinitely. There's no expiry when you sign up for the free trial at educalm.com. And that free trial will also give you a training video that you can use to learn how to kind of navigate the website and use the program. If you're enjoying the resources from the free trial, you feel like it fits your teaching style and it fits your goals, then you can get over a year worth of no prep mindfulness audios, videos, printables, and more by signing up for a yearly membership. So this program really removes all the hurdles you might be having in terms of trying to find good resources and trying to find, things that follow one another and actually make sense throughout the year. This program is ready to go. You don't have to do any prep. It really removes that barrier and that hurdle for you. So to learn more or sign up, go to educalm.com. That's EduCalme. All right, now let's get into this episode.
Okay, should we just start by saying that when we started experimenting with mindfulness in the classroom and also social emotional learning in the classroom, there were a lot of mistakes that were made.
Definitely.
It was such a learning curve.
Yeah. Well, we were doing it when we were still new to mindfulness ourselves. We hadn't done any training on how to teach mindfulness yet. So we were kind of just experimenting with what we thought would work. And it was an experimentation process. We found lots of things that didn't work and then kept honing in on the things that were working until we kind of developed a formula that really worked.
Yes. And of course, we're still always learning. Like sometimes I just one day have an inspiration to just try something new in my classroom. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it's always a learning curve. But over the years, from doing this in our own classrooms, but also from working with other teachers who are starting to do this in their classrooms and being there for them throughout their journeys, we've really broken it down to 4 things, 4 do's and 4 don'ts that will create, if you follow those 4 things, you will have success in your classroom.
Yes.
Like there might be little hiccups and you might have to be patient as you're learning, but if you break it down to these 4 things, you're going to rock it.
Absolutely. These 4 things took us a long time to learn. So we're fast tracking it for you by following them. You don't have to take the, couple years that it took us to finalize the process that worked. So let's get into these 4 steps so that you guys will be ready to get started in your classroom.
Okay. So the first one, and this one is when you are first introducing it to your students. When this is brand new, maybe it's in the first couple days of school or whatever, and you're letting them know that this is something that you'll be doing throughout the year. You have to introduce the students to mindfulness when they're already calm, to start with success. To ensure that there will be success long term, you have to present it when they're calm. And sometimes, when the class is chaotic or the students, classroom management is difficult, those are the moments where we have like this idea where like we should try this. But we are telling you right now from personal experience that these are not the moments when you should be introducing this new concept, because it won't work.
Exactly. I literally the first time I tried teaching mindfulness in my classroom was a day I was teaching grade 8 that year, and my students came in after recess and they had some sort of big thing that happened between
It's
two
always
friend
recess.
groups. It was always after recess. They came in just in this they were loud and they had all these problems. And I was like, I can't deal with all these people that are speaking loudly at me, trying to get me to solve their problems. We need to just do a mindfulness practice and calm down before we can move forward. So I found a 10-minute mindfulness audio on YouTube and tried to get them to sit still for 10 minutes when they were, full of emotion and angry. And it did not work. It really did not. And that's when I was reminded that mindfulness is actually a skill that we build over time. And so just like reading or math or anything we do in the classroom, we have to teach the kids the skill before they can actually learn it. So if we want kids to use mindfulness strategies to help them calm down, manage their emotions, self-regulate, we have to teach them the tools, teach them the skills when they're calm, so that then they can start using it when they are feeling big emotions.
That's right. Okay, so quick recap. Do not introduce the practice when students are already frustrated, angry, or if the classroom is not in control. Do introduce the students to mindfulness when they're already calm, if you want this to be a success long term.
Exactly.
That's number one, most important of all.
Yeah. So another thing with this point is that you have to, if you're thinking of doing mindfulness in the classroom as a way to control your students or, manage classroom behaviors, you have to think of it as a long game. This isn't something that you just throw in oh, I see that everyone is having a meltdown. Let's do 5-finger breathing and everything will be fixed in this one instance. That isn't the case. We need to practice 5-finger breathing for a couple weeks maybe, and then we can use that as a tool for classroom management later once they already know it.
That's right. And so if you're unsure how to introduce your students to mindfulness, because sometimes, the hardest part is just starting, we do have a whole podcast episode just about that. And we also have a written out lesson plan that's step by step. There's no prep required. You just have to follow the lesson plan. And you can find the link to that in the show notes. All right. So number 2 is do practice every day at the same time and make it a routine. And not only that, but let students know about it in advance so that they expect it and they look forward to it. So it's not a surprise. It should never be a surprise.
Yeah. I started having the most success with this when I actually wrote mindfulness on our agenda for the day. And we did it every day after morning announcements. And just like anything we do in the classroom, those first couple weeks are really about building routines around what is, our reading look like? Where do you hand things in? How, all routine building is so important in the beginning. And it's the same with a mindfulness practice, is building the routines around the practice so that then it can just run really smoothly, like a well-oiled machine over time. But having it always at the same time makes it become just part of the routine.
And like the time of day that you decide to do it is not as important as the routine of doing it at the same time every day. Right?
Exactly.
Like we both, you and I, love doing it first thing. Like now you're teaching high school, so you do it at the very beginning of your class time. Mm-hmm. And I'm teaching grade 6 this year, and I do it at the very beginning of my day, right after O Canada. And that's what I prefer, because I just feel like, okay, right after that, we're diving into academics. Like this is when I want them to have that calm moment. But some teachers do it, after recess or after lunch or whatever, and they love it for their own reasons. Mm-hmm. But the most important part is just sticking to it. Okay. Yeah. And this is also another, like we have a whole podcast episode about this. If you want to learn kind of like how to structure it in your day so that it makes sense for you, we'll put that in the show notes, but it's episode 65. And so that's the do. And the do not is to do not practice randomly at different times throughout the day or the week. That is not conducive to success.
Exactly. Because then you spend more time managing the routine around it. You spend more time trying to get your students to sit down and get ready to listen to the mindfulness audio or do the mindfulness practice, and you waste a bunch of time.
Right.
When it's part of the routine, you're not wasting time. Your mindfulness practice starts, ends, you get into the academics, and you don't feel like you've just lost instruction time. In fact, it actually gains instruction time back for you.
Tenfold.
They're more. Yeah. I always say when we're starting our mindfulness practice, okay, guys, we're getting our brain ready for learning. That's like we're warming up our brain for learning. Yeah. That's kind of how I present it to my students at all ages. And that just makes sense for us.
My students know, like, at this point of the year, we're halfway through the year, they know exactly the routine. They know right after O Canada, we have a quick, like, how's it going, everyone? And they know they're going into mindfulness right away. I don't even have to tell them anymore to like put their things away or whatever. They just know. But that's because I dedicated that time from the beginning, and I was so strict about this is the routine that now it just happens. I don't have to say anything. It's actually amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. It makes me so happy that it's like, I don't need to manage. It's just, we're good. They know.
It's a machine that runs itself.
That's right.
This point. One thing that I wasn't expecting to, like, it kind of surprised me how useful this was. The problem it solved in the high school classroom is that my kind of trigger word for saying, okay, it's time to do our mindfulness practice. We always start at the beginning of the class. So they walk into the class, I say hi to everyone, I do attendance, and then I say, okay, everyone put your phones away, close everything. We're about to get our brain ready for learning, or we're doing our EdCom practice now. And so that becomes the cue of like, okay, it's class time now, and phones get put away, distractions get put away, and they know that, okay, now we're starting. So it's kind of created not only this routine of mindfulness, but this routine of now is focus time. And we're putting away distractions.
And that's awesome, because then probably throughout the class itself, you don't have to tell them to put their things away as much because it's already done at the beginning. It's just part of the routine.
Exactly.
Yeah. I find like this year with my grade 6 students, I always just say, okay, now we're going into our own little bubbles. And for some reason, I've never used that before, but this year, this is the thing that works. So now we're going into our own little bubbles. And I always encourage them to like put their head on their desk, like covering. How do you explain that? Like they cover themselves. If you guys could see me right now, I'm doing all these arm movements. Like covering their.
It's like folding your arms onto the table and then putting your forehead down on top of your arms.
It's not that complicated. And yeah, that works great. So that's the second one. If you want success, just follow the do and the don't, which is practice every day at the same time and make it a routine. And do not practice randomly throughout the different times.
Although, one last little side note on this topic before we move on. When you are doing it at the same time every day and they're building those skills, then you can sprinkle things in throughout the day. So, for example, in my class, we do the mindfulness practice first thing every period. But then after, like today, I noticed about 3/4 of the way through my lesson today, my students started getting a little bit antsy. And so I said, okay, I can tell that you guys are having a hard time focusing right now. Let's do some mindful movement. So we stood up, we did some sun breathing, jumped around a little bit to get some energy out, did some deep breaths, sat back down and got into it. So I took a pause of maybe 2 minutes to do a little mindful movement. And then we sat back down and they were way more focused till the end of class. So I was able to get way more done.
Yeah. And as you say that, I'm thinking my students, because of this practice, they've become very good at recognizing when they need that moment. And so if you're a teacher in Canada or anywhere cold in the world, you know that, weeks on end of indoor recess is very difficult on everyone, which we are going through that right now in this, -40 weather that we've had for the last week or two. And it is hard.
Yeah.
But my students are so good at telling me Madam, I'm feeling really fidgety. We need to do something. And they just tell me instead of it
becoming a problem.
Yeah. Instead of it becoming a classroom management problem.
Yeah. They're self-aware. So they can see, oh, this is my personal problem. And hey, I have a solution. I need some mindful movement. That happened to me today too. I had a student that at the end of the practice, when we were sharing what we noticed during the practice, they said, I noticed that I couldn't sit still. My legs were bouncing around. And I think that means I need to take a walk. Can I go take a quick walk? And I said, yep. Go for it. Then they came back 2 minutes later and ready to learn.
Yeah.
So we're empowering them to recognize their own needs.
Yeah. So good. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3 is to continue your practice every single day. It seems simple, but we have to remember mindfulness is a new skill that students are learning and it takes time. Okay. We promise that you will begin to see changes over time. This isn't this thing where you sit them down, you introduce it, and it's like rainbows and butterflies. It's gonna take a while, and you will see huge transformations in your students if you stick to it.
The biggest mistake teachers make with mindfulness is that they'll do it for 1 or 2 classes, and then they'll be like, I don't see a difference yet, so I'm just going to stop. And they give up on it thinking that oh, maybe it's not worth the time. That would be like trying to teach your kids to read. And after the second day, they don't know how to read independently yet. And then you think that it's because it doesn't work. So I'm just not going to do it.
I'm just going to quit.
Yeah. So I think as soon as we switch the mindset from this is a solution or something that's going to solve a classroom management problem and more of this is something that's going to develop skills over time in my students that will allow them to be more self-aware and independent and self-regulate. So it's like a gradual release rather than a magic pill that will work today.
There is no magic pill.
Exactly. Exactly. That being said, I have been pleasantly surprised this year with how quickly my students, honestly, from day one, my students were 100% into the mindfulness practice. And I had 0 issues, literally not even one problem this year. And maybe it's because in high school, students talk a lot more about mental health. They're more aware of how mindfulness can be a solution, but I've had 0 pushback from students. They've all been loving it.
I do feel that, and I don't know, if it's because of the pandemic, but talking about mental health has become more and more okay. And so I find that too this year, but it's hard to fully tell if it's because my group is just so they're just on board. Mm-hmm. They're just that type of group, you know? But also when I presented it this year, I talked about how with the pandemic and what we're all going through together and individually. Like, we need to take care of ourselves. And they could so relate to that because it's been a hard year for our students. Like right now, none of our students are playing sports, like any team sports or anything. And so they're just at home all the time and it's hard for them. And we see that. And I think presenting it that way might have helped. I'm not really sure.
I think that might be part of it too, because this year I focused, when I introduced mindfulness to my students, I did focus more on using the language of this is to improve our mental health and give us strategies to support us when we're feeling anxious or worried or frustrated.
I feel like I didn't used to bring it up in that same way I did this year.
Yeah, maybe that could be part of it. Interesting. Try it out and let us know. See if it works for you. Maybe that'll be something that we add to the do's and don'ts list for the future. Present it as a solution for mental health.
That's right. So, of course, you probably guessed the don't. The don't is don't quit the practice just because you're not seeing progress right away. Just like learning to read, just like you already mentioned, Kaylee, it will not happen overnight. It takes time. So with time, students will start loving the practice. And they really do. We're not just saying that. Like, they will ask if you can't do it one day for some reason, they will ask why. Like, they miss out on that time.
Yeah.
So yes, with time, they'll also start applying the skills they've learned, which will in turn make just everything easier, including classroom management.
And in addition, for a lot of times, I think when teachers stop doing the practice early on, it's because they're feeling like maybe they're not teaching it right, or they're doing it wrong. And you know, as a teacher doing this in the classroom, you only get better at this over time. Like we said, how many years have we been teaching this for in how many classrooms? And we're still learning new ways to get better at teaching.
That's just being a teacher.
Exactly. So I think just be careful not to like judge yourself if it doesn't work. I'm doing air quotes, like if it doesn't work immediately, you're going to get better at doing this with practice as well. So just keep at it, keep trying, and don't be hard on yourself if you feel uncomfortable in the beginning and you're not sure if you're doing it quite right. Just keep at it.
Way.
It'll get easier with practice.
And if you want to like really dive into this mindfulness learning curve thing and like just learning about, you know, how the progress happens, we do have a whole the Balanced Educator podcast episode about that. We'll put in the show notes, but it's episode 64. Okay, last one. You ready?
Yeah. Okay.
Do join in the practice to be a model to your students. So important. Mindfulness is good for everyone, children and adults. Okay. So don't expect
make sure that you aren't just, turning on the audio and then, trying to get corrections done or doing emails while your students are listening to the audio. When you're doing the mindfulness practice, it's just as important for you as it is for them. And we get so much feedback from teachers that say, I started doing this practice with my students because I thought they needed it. I didn't realize how much I needed it, and how this practice is helping me as a teacher to be calmer. And because I'm more calm, my students are more calm, and I have more patience, and I'm more effective, and I'm more focused. So this is a practice for everyone. And it's really important for you to model it to your students because they might have never practiced mindfulness before or seen anyone practice mindfulness. So they also are looking to you for cues of what is this supposed to look like? How am I supposed to sit?
And if you don't think it's important and you don't participate, they won't either, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's just the reality of it. It's like with anything else.
Yeah.
Right? If you put a rule in place, but you don't follow the rule yourself as the teacher, you can't really expect the students to follow it either. It's just how it is.
Exactly. And I do remember a story that one of the teachers that uses the EduCom Classroom program had shared where they said, it was working so well in the beginning of the year. And then I started slipping and I wasn't practicing with them. I was answering emails and stuff like that while they were practicing. And then I started feeling frustrated because they weren't doing the practice properly anymore until I realized, wait, this is my fault. I should be be doing it with them. And then once that teacher went back to doing the practice with their students, the students were on board again and the practice was so much more effective.
And honestly, like I 100% feel like I'm a better teacher because I take those 5 minutes too. Like after the 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to like be a good teacher, to help them with what they need. And some days, like I don't always sleep the best. And some days when I don't sleep well, it's like so hard to get myself to school and like I just feel like I'm dragging myself and it's like, oh, I don't want to be here, you know, being human and all that. But then after like when I'm really with them in those 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm refreshed. Like now I'm ready.
Yes.
You know? So
I totally agree. I find that I'm loving this semester because I do the mindfulness practice 2 times per morning because I do it with both of my groups. So it's so great. And I'm teaching new courses this year. And so oftentimes I get to school feeling anxious. Like even if I've done a mindfulness practice at home and taken time for a slow morning, doesn't matter what my morning looks like. Usually by the time I get to school, I feel a little anxious just because there's the unknown of like, this is
so much new.
Yeah, so much newness. This is the first time I'm teaching this lesson. I don't really know how long it's going to take. I don't know how it's going to go. So
classic teacher wants to fill all the time, right? Yeah. You're so worried you're not going to fill all the time.
So true. So now that I, get to school, I'm feeling a little anxious as the day is starting, but then I always start my morning with mindfulness with my students.
Brings me back.
And it reminds me of what's important and it allows me to connect with my students. And then by the end of the practice, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference.
It really does.
Don't do emails and things like that. Also though, and this is part of our don't for this 4th one, is don't expect the kids to be completely still or silent. Mm-hmm. It's okay if they're like wiggling or moving a bit, or even at the very beginning, probably giggling a little bit. They're still benefiting from this moment. And if you keep modeling it, they will come around, right? And they'll just get better and better at participating and respecting those 5 minutes as a time for ourselves to get our brains ready for learning and teaching.
Exactly. And it's so funny. I'm surprised by this every year. And then I'm like, well, I'm not surprised because this always happens, but I'm always surprised. The students that seem like they're not getting anything out of it are always the ones that tell me they've gotten a lot out of it. They thank me for it every single year.
Like, at the end of the year, when you ask the kids like, hey, what was your favorite thing this whole school year? Classic question, right? How many kids that you did like that you felt like basically didn't participate all year or whatever. And they're like, mindfulness, that's their favorite thing.
Yeah. It's so funny
Most
how that
memorable
works.
thing of the school year.
Yeah. So we can't judge what students are getting out of it necessarily based on how they're sitting. So if students require supports for sitting still
or tools,
then that's fine. Provide them with the same supports during the mindfulness practice as you would provide for other activities you do in the classroom. If that means having a wobbly chair, having something in their hand, or maybe their eyes are open and they're looking around, just because it doesn't necessarily look like they're getting something out of it doesn't mean they aren't listening and taking it in their own way. As long as they aren't distracting and disrupting others. And then that's a question of really establishing the expectations and establishing individual expectations with individual students if that is required. So if I have
just like anything else.
Exactly. So
differentiation is so important.
Exactly. So if that means that you have one student that actually walks around the class during the mindfulness practice, that's okay. They are still benefiting from listening to the audios, processing what they're hearing, and also they're benefiting from the energy of the whole classroom that's becoming more calm, and you as the teacher becoming more calm and having more patience. They're benefiting from everyone's energy as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a student that like I just thought they're not listening, they're not paying attention. And when I got on the parent teacher meeting, which was online or virtual because of COVID, the parent thanked me for doing this and said their kid was like loving it and learning all these strategies, and that they were using them at home. And I was like shocked. Like my jaw was probably on the floor. The parent was probably like what? Like what's going on?
Yeah.
But yeah, you just never know the impact that you're creating in your students. And that's not just on a social emotional level, that's on so many levels, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're giving them strategies that are helping them to just manage every area of their life. And it's always surprising to me how often parents say that they're noticing their child using these strategies at home. And oftentimes they're teaching it to their family and they're helping their parents take mindful breaths, and at all ages, whether that's, grade 1 or kindergarten all the way to grade 12. These are skills that kids, whether it seems like it in the classroom or not, they're taking these skills with them throughout their whole lives.
Yeah. So with these new 4 do's and don'ts, we encourage you to take these in and to start the Educom Classroom free trial.
Yes, this will make it easy for you to create a routine. It'll make it easy for you to really follow all these 4 do's and don'ts. We developed this program based off of what we found works and doesn't work. So it's all structured to help you have success with the practice.
So that's your exit ticket for today. If you're not there yet, get on the free trial. And how can they do that?
Go to educalm.com and sign up for the free trial. So that's
simple.
EDUCALME. And we will, of course, link that to the show notes as well. All right. This was fun.
So fun to podcast in person.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. If you got value from this episode, please share it with a colleague or a friend. I said that weird. A colleague or a friend.
Try again. Rewind.
Share it with someone that you think would get value from it too.
Okay. Have an awesome week.
Bye.